So we'll try to talk to the commissioner again.
Hello,
Oh,
can you hear
perfect.
me?
Yes, I do hear you. Welcome to the Fehmarn Belt Days 2021. What a pleasure to have you here with us. Feel free to start right away with your impulse.
Hello everyone. Thank you for having me here today. There are many reasons to celebrate the Fehmarn Belt project. It will cut journey times, strengthen cross-border relations, and boost rail, not to mention the environmental benefits. A shorter train journey between Hamburg and Copenhagen will make rail a more attractive option for passengers and freight alike. Studies predict that once the Fehmarn Belt opens, we will see a significant shift of heavy goods from road to rail between the Scandinavia and Central Europe. Industries such as forestry, steel, and raw materials prevalent in the region will have a more competitive option to transport their goods. Having more rail passengers and freight is good for the industry, but is also good news for overall transport emissions and therefore the environment, as rail is one of the cleanest transport modes. The new multimodal link will offer more efficient cross-border rail transport for commuters and tourists, as well as freight, stepping up multimodality, decreasing emissions, promoting a shift from road to rail, boosting high-speed rail, and increased connectivity are all objectives clearly stated in our sustainable and smart mobility strategy, which we launched in December last year. Therefore, the Fehmarn Belt project ticks all the right boxes for us. The European Commission will continue its political and financial support for the project, both for the tunnel and for the access routes in Denmark and Germany. Located on the Scandinavian Mediterranean corridor, the Fehmarn Belt fixed link is and will remain a critical part of the core TEN-T network. As such, it is a priority. There are not just words. Between 2014 and facility. We have also awarded a further 34.2 million euros for the study phase of the Southern Access routes in Germany and 123.5 million for the Danish access route to the tunnel. These funds are much needed to make the project operational once the major works of the tunnel will be finished. Now, Fehmarn Belt Link is not an isolated project in the region. For example, the upgrade of the S4 railway line connecting Hamburg to the sea, the Storstrom Bridge, the new double-track light railway line between Hamburg and Ahrensburg will be quite a boost for multimodality. The Fehmarn Belt completion means zero border stops, full deployment of ERTMS, agreement on a common train length, and common operational rules. Your comprehensive approach to improving connectivity in the region while modernizing transport really does make you pioneers. I hope you will always be as proud as what you have achieved by working together as you will be as the architects of the world's longest immersed tunnel and the world's longest combined tunnel for road and rail traffic. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm looking forward to the opening of the tunnel in 2029. But in the meantime, I wish you a wonderful day and enriching discussions. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Adine Valian, Commissioner for Transport. I hope you're still able to hear us, and I do have one question. Is that all right for you? If I ask you one last question.
I'm sorry, I can't stay any longer.
Okay, no problem then. Thanks a lot for your best wishes. We really welcome that. And have a great day. We'll move on. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, let us move on. That was quite hectic. I'm sorry. But now we're all here. And we would like to talk for the first time in a little panel situation. And we want to ask the questions we have already asked at the beginning of the whole conference. Our region, our future, are we stronger together? With the completion of the fixed link, probably in 2029, the Fehmarn Belt region will move closer together. But are we one region yet? Since COVID-19 and closed borders, we want to answer the questions how to restart the economy. Is there still a need for globalization, or should we focus on rather green growth? And what does cross-border cooperation, sustainable development, and the role of the EU Green Deal have to do with the Fehmarn Belt region? Are we, as a region, stronger together? We would like to discuss that during the next hour with a quite young panel. And I'm very happy to introduce you to our 5 guests from politics, economics, and science. So, let's start with Jan Philipp Albrecht, Minister for Energy, Agriculture, the Environment, Nature and Digitalization of Schleswig-Holstein, former member of European Parliament and specialized in the field of civil rights, data protection and democracy. Welcome. Great to see you again.
Thank you.
And then we'll have Holger Skov Rasmussen, not only the mayor of Lolland municipality in Denmark, where a major part of the construction of Fehmarn Belt Tunnel is situated, but also chairman of Fehmarn Belt Development and Danish-German Fehmarn Belt Committee. Welcome.
Thank you.
And on one of the screens, we have Dasha Krivonos. I'll see her, perfect, CEO of the Copenhagen Institute for Future Studies, a futurologist who scans the horizon for developments, their interconnectedness, and potential societal and business implications. And we'll move on to the next female speaker or panelist, Karin Beukel, also here on screen, co-founder of Circular Food Technology, a company that upcycles brewers' spent grains into healthy and climate-friendly food, with the goal to build a more sustainable circular food system. And also with us live on stage, Andreas Dörrich, Managing Director of On Campus, a subsidiary of Polytechnic University of Lübeck, taking care of all aspects of digital learning. Andreas is also board member of Junior Chamber of Commerce in Ostholstein. Welcome. Plus, you see Karina Williams back there. She'll watch the live chat closely and brings in questions from the audience and participants. Please feel very welcome to use that chat to ask questions to our panelists. So, let's start. We'll have not even an hour, but a bit of time to get into our topic and start our first discussion. Jan Philipp Albrecht, we have heard a lot about the future of transportation and mobility by Dine Verlienne and some of the speakers also before, but I'd like to make our subject a bit broader. Yes, there will be major construction zones in the region and, in case of doubt, more traffic on rails and streets. But still, what kind of chances do you, as Minister also for Environment and Nature, see for sustainable development of the whole region, especially having the EU Green Deal in mind?
Well, I think that for the region to grow together, it is one of the main aims to really become one region and to also be active in connecting with each other for achieving our goals on a European level. Because when we look at the huge challenges ahead, like climate change and the loss of variety in the ecological system on land and on sea, then we know that those problems and challenges are cross-border by nature. And we have to tackle them without looking at borders of cities, of regions, or of member states, or even the European Union. We have to look ahead and deal with it together, especially when it comes to the Baltic Sea, where we have an international cooperation also with the HELCOM network, and all the activities need to be combined in order to address those issues. And I'm very much looking forward to growing stronger together and addressing these challenges together, also here in this region, where most of these issues are very viable. We really have to deal with a huge transformation into a carbon neutral future.
The microphone.
Neutrality is one of the main issues we have to achieve, and of course restructuring our mobility, restructuring the way we live, the way we build up economy and even industry, all of that is changing. And I think that for all of us it's clear we can't do that only for ourselves. We have to connect with many other actors around the globe in order to achieve that. And that's why I think this approach of dealing with it together is the most important we have to do at the moment.
Thank you. Holger Rasmussen, so you're somehow directly affected by the whole construction work going on. How much is the environment important for the whole project from your side of view?
It's very important, as Mr. Albrecht said. We have since the Femern Belt Days in Malmö, I said so. We have to make that green corridor between Hamburg and Copenhagen. I'm very focused on that. On Lolland, the island Lolland, we are the area in Denmark that produces most sustainable energy, renewable energy, and we try to put it into the structure, to the structure planning. We are talking with Femern AS, and we want to show the world that we can make all this great infrastructure with CO2 neutral carbon emission, and we are going to find out how to achieve that. We produce on Lolland 2 gigawatt renewable energy every year. So we have made a solution in Denmark that we want to be into 2030, want to be have a reduction on 70% CO carbon, and I think we will achieve that goal. And now on Lolland, we are going to in the next half year, we are going to make that. We are talking about Power to X on Lolland to make hydrogen, make methanol and ammoniac to our agriculture farms, and so we have to find a way to use all that power that we produce on Lolland, and we're going to put it into the factory, and we're going to put it into our agriculture.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. Let's move to the business side as well, having you as two politicians talking about it from up there. Karin Beukel, what do you expect from politics to have better chances for green products, if you're having them right here?
Yeah. So first of all, it's really important that we get the politics to understand the new products that are upcoming. For example, we're working in upcycling, and this technology is very new across Europe. So therefore, politicians, they need to get a grasp of what the opportunities are and how they can become part of the solution. For example, local food authorities are in some countries going to be a challenge for us when we start working with upcycling. And therefore, that would be a particular focus I would love the politicians to have in the future.
Thanks. And Dasha Krivonos, what would you say? You're looking into the future. You saw the pandemic coming in and borders closed. What will change in this cross-border situation course of the pandemic? What would you say?
Well, I think first of all, it's shown us from our best and our worst sides. So if you look at the Nordic region alone, if I was asked as a futurist a year ago or 2 years ago, say you have a hypothetical pandemic, how are the Nordics going to react? And I would say, well, they have so much in common. Population types, cultural heritage, healthcare systems, etc., that they're going to move in closer together and be in unison. And then we've seen that every single Nordic country almost had done their own thing. So I think in many ways, the pandemic has been this flashlight lighting through the cracks and showing in every single way we were not in unison. And I think that's often also a wake-up call. So I think something like the Femern connection is a good way to bring things back together. And I think it's sooner rather than later, because we're having a lot of centrifugal forces out there. If even before the pandemic, we had Brexit and some European tension on the back of the financial crisis, etc. So I think the pandemic, if anything, has been this flashlight in the cracks, and they're pretty much all wide open now. So I think it's a very good opportunity to try and mend them rather than build them deeper.
And what would you recommend to do right now?
Well, I think if anything, I would probably recommend to. I mean, the peace project and the union project were the projects of the 20th century. They were necessary in the back of 2 world wars, a cultural divide across the middle of the globe, if you will, with the Soviet Union, etc. So we had a project in the 20th century, and we succeeded. So we got the UN. We got established institutions like never before. So we can do so much when we agree that there is an issue. Now, very few people would disagree that the climate challenge is the 21st century challenge. So I think if we put all that effort and look for every way where we're the same, look for every common interest rather than difference, if we focus on regional strength but acknowledge that we're extremely interdependent. And if anything, the pandemic has shown so, but so is the climate challenge ahead of us. So I think looking for every way where there are more commonalities than differences, backing the regional strength. And I'm very happy to see Karin represented today, because we often look at energy alone. It has to be fuels. It's something about emissions. I mean, food waste would be the 3rd biggest emitter in the world if it were a country. So it's so much more than just energy and transportation. So I think looking for common solutions, applying all of our strength, and then making sure that no country is an island, even those that are islands.
Thank you. Andreas Dürrich, with your company, you offer educational opportunities online, and how important is cross-border cooperation or transport infrastructure for you in that sense?
So, as we...
No, I think we need another microphone. Yeah. So maybe we'll wait for that microphone, and I'll ask Karin Beukel again, because we heard something before, there was that this is quite important as well.
Now they say my microphone is...
Yes, I can hear you, but maybe I'll ask Karin Beukel first, and then we'll come back to that question. So we were talking about, or Dasha was talking about how food is important as well. So please give us a bit more of a taste in a way. So why is food and circular economy so important for a green new world and growth?
Yeah, so I agree very much with Dasha. So we have a broken food system, and that's really the core of the challenge that we're facing. And that is a global challenge, also like Jan-Philipp Albrecht said, that we need to look at challenges in a local perspective, but with a global sense of it, so we understand how we impact the world globally. So right now, 1/3 of all food is wasted. 820 million people are suffering from hunger. Almost 2 billion people do not have access to enough food, and we have 800 million people also not having access to clean and safe water. And at the same time, in certain countries, we see that obesity is a huge problem. So there's some paradoxes in the full food system that we need to solve. And at the same time, the food industry is a part of or contributing with 22% of all the global CO2 emissions. So when we work with the food system, we need to change from a very linear thinking, where you think about economies of scale and economies of scope, to a more circular thinking. And that's also the core of what we're doing in the company that I have co-founded. So it's really trying to solve these huge issues by looking into a circular future of food systems. And we have started to attack one of the most largest side streams in the world, which is brewer spent grain. There's 40 million tons of brewer spent grains in the world. And actually, alone upcycling these brewer spent grains can cover 10% of the calorie deficit that we're facing in 2027, forecasted by WHO. So these side streams, they have a huge potential. And I know that we still have a lot of side streams to upcycle, and that's where our focus should be. We can do it better in terms of the climate impact. We know that already from what we've been doing the last years on brewer spent grain, but we can do that on all these side streams. And therefore, we should not have residuals in the future that is not used in the most optimal way. We need to stop using the planet more than one time a year. So that's why we are looking into a circular food system in the future.
Thanks. Andreas Dürrich, now we're able to hear you.
I hope so.
Yes. When they turn on your microphone again, let us hear you again.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
perfect.
great.
So, what's so important for you what's so important to have cross-border cooperation?
Well, we are working in the educational sector, and there are so many different solutions around the world, and I guess everyone in Germany should know that there are often better examples for the educational system, from school to community college, university, and everything in between. We have to learn from each other, but at the moment, it seems we're looking to places that are far away we want to learn from, but not from our close neighbors in Denmark. So if you ask in our region, how far away is a major capital in Central Europe compared to Lolland, to most people, Lolland from here seems to be further away than Paris or London. So although we have a common history in our region for centuries, it seems we do not feel as a region at the moment. So I guess there's a big chance for the region to understand each other as one region and to grow together. So this is where we have to start, and this could also then foster the educational sector on both sides.
And also learn from each other. And I mean, we do have Danish schools in Flensburg.
Yeah, so I attended, or even I was hosting a conference about the fixed Fehmarnbelt link about 10 years ago. Back then I was working in an Interact project about that topic, and one of the major conclusions when we dreamed about the fixed link in 2020 to be ready was that we have to learn with each other, from each other. And I guess this is the main step we have to come to. So let's hope that we are at that point in, let's be optimistic, 7 years from now.
Thanks. Karina, you're smiling at me. It seems like there are a couple of questions from the chat.
I don't remember who. Can you hear me? Now you can hear me. I don't remember. I think Dasha said it, that it's a wake-up call, and I'm actually. I want to make a wake-up call to our audience. There is not very much going on in the chat yet, but there is one really interesting question to Mr. Albrecht. I will read it to you. It is: France is in the process of banning short-haul flights where there is a good rail connection. With the new fast rail links, would the Fehmarnbelt region be a suitable place to pioneer similar policies?
Yes, I'm convinced that we have to drastically improve railway connections throughout Europe, and we are working on it already on many places, and I'm happy that in some member states we can see good progress. But I'm hoping that we will be able to deliver more in the upcoming years. And I'm also convinced that in Germany we have to do huge investments in order to improve our trans-border connections to other regions around. And of course, here, building up such a new train connection will, of course, also connect us in Europe and in this region better and allow us to, in the future, take trains more than planes on these short connections. And we all know that there will be plane connections also in the future when we go to other regions in the world. And we will have to decarbonize them, but we won't be able to decarbonize all of the flights which we are conducting right now, and at least until the pandemic started. And so that means we have to foster train connections, especially also night trains, for example. And I'm happy that also here a change is coming to this region, because there's new night trains also conducting in the upcoming future. And I'm happy, I would be happy if there would be more also by different member states like Germany.
And how is it with Denmark? Do you need to put more money or get more money into the train system? And what do you need in Lolland?
Yeah, we already do it, and we are working together in the string connection between Oslo, Stockholm, Copenhagen, Hamburg, and so on into Europe. And I think it's going to go stronger in the coming years with the train. And we need to invest in it. And I'm so lucky as being a mayor on Lolland that we get our total new infrastructure from Copenhagen to Hamburg. And that part of it, as David, what's David?
Andreas is my name.
Andreas said that we are building a new region, and we have to find out how we have a great opportunity to show the world that we can build a new region that is sustainable, that is taking in all the food, all the things that we have to change in the world. We can do that because we are in the middle of an area in the world that has to show the rest of the world that we can change. We can do it with sustainable energy. We can do it with our food. We can do it with our agriculture. We can put down the CO2 commission, carbon commission, and everything. So that's what I'm dreaming about, that we are going to do. And as I had a lunch yesterday with Landrat Reinhard Sager, and we talked about that his region, Ostholstein, and my region, Lolland-Falster, is at the call it Land's End. And now we are going to be connected, and then it will give us new opportunities. I'm very focused on that because, of course, I love my island, I love my municipality, but I think this is a big issue for the region, because what we're talking about here is going to be the next 100 years growth. The industrialization that came 100 years ago. This would be the new issue, and I think we have the possibilities to do that in this area, and we have to work together, and I'm sure that we are going to succeed if we can find out that. I'm a chairman for the Fehmarn Committee, and we have to make that stronger to participate on both sides. We have worked for 10 years with culture, with schools, but now we have to work with the labor market. We have to work with education. We have to work into politics also, because we are not different. So we can solve a lot of problems if we work together.
So Andreas said maybe in 7 years we're gonna have something like a common region. Would you say so?
We have to know where we have to be in 29. We have to have our goals to be there. We have to know when the Queen or the Crown Prince or whoever cuts that red thread, then we have to know where do we want to be at that time, and we have to hurry.
Dasha, would you say this common vision is already there?
Well, I read a quote a while ago which said, "A vision without a plan is a dream, and a plan without a vision is a nightmare." So I think the vision is there, but I do think that we need, and it's easy to say as a futurist that we need to think long term, but as an economist, I can also say that we're looking at short-term fixes for something that's a long-term thing. I mean, Mr. Gore won a Nobel Prize arguing for the inconvenient truth, and yet we're unwilling to make inconvenience part of the solution. It is not going to be convenient to change the way we live. Yet the way we live has proven to be not sustainable. So I think it's about time that we realize as citizens, as consumers, as participants in the ecosystem, that at some point inconvenience is going to be part of the solution. Mm-hmm. Now, another thing, if I can just add, so being an economist, we often feel a little bit sidetracked. It's always up to the politicians, the engineers, the scientists, the biologists. We're looking for them to solve the problem, find crops that need less water, find food that doesn't decay, find new energy. But I think it's about time that we engage all of the different professions, because we need to look at beyond GDP. You get what you measure. So for many years, we've had GDP and we've had economic growth. So we need to look at beyond GDP. Economists need to step up and see how can we contribute to this. We need to look at carbon tax, because before we feel the pain, very little change is going to happen. We need to look at the lawyers, and there's many of them in the courtrooms right now actually giving nature rights. So I think it would suit us well to act before we're forced in a courtroom and before the nature is actually suing us on its own behalf. So I think all the professions need to step up a little bit more and not just look to the scientists, the engineers, and the politicians.
Mm-hmm. But we do have some politicians here. Jan Philipp, what would you add to that?
I don't have to add anything. I think it's rightly said. But on the other side, of course, we are already also there to start with reconstructing our society and economy in order to achieve the goals and the visions which we have. The real challenge now is to be bold with it, to not treat it like an interesting thing to develop for the future, but to treat it as the task of our time and as the existential question we have to answer now. Because if we don't do the radical change in the way how we do economy, like to be carbon neutral better now than later, then we will also lose economic weight in the world. We will lose chances to develop, and we will lose, last but not least, our basis, our fundament on which we did economic wealth and did achieve economic wealth and also build up our society which we have today. So the existential question needs to be more in the center of our activity and decisions.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. And was there another question? You were looking at me like that. Karina.
There actually is another question, but I'm not sure. Maybe you can yourself decide who wants to take it. It's rather general, and this is about, maybe it's for Andreas Dörrich best. Will the fixed link make the economy grow? And what initiatives will make the growth stronger? So we discussed growth and what we have to think about in the future for growth to be sustainable. So maybe you have some answers for this chat question.
Yes, I can take over the question. So there are several aspects in that question. First of all, yes, there's a big chance that we as a region can become stronger on an economical level, but to do so, we have to understand each other as a common region that has to work on something. Otherwise, we might end up as a drive-through region between Hamburg and Copenhagen, just making the connection 2 hours shorter than it was before by train or by car. So there are several possibilities at the moment. I guess most of what's happening in both sides of the region is oriented to each of the major cities, so it's Copenhagen and Hamburg. And at the moment, we don't have a focus to anything that is in between, except for tourism on both sides. So there have been several projects, also funded by the EU partly, that have fostered tourism on both sides of the Fehmarnbelt region, but there haven't been happening many other things at the moment. But there's a big chance that we start doing so, and we have to start it in a way that is future-oriented. So that is not looking at next year, but it is the vision for 10, 20, 30 years from now. And I guess we have one example here from our Danish colleagues with us on the panel. So these modern, I don't want to call it industrial development, but it does not necessarily have to be digital. Considering the future, we always think of the word everything has to be digital. Digital solutions can solve many problems, but they will never solve all of them, and we have to keep in mind the rest. And on the other hand, there are challenges that are getting bigger and bigger, and it's also connected to aspect of transport. Yes, we will have a fixed link between Hamburg and Copenhagen, and I guess many people will use it. But in general, young people tend to travel more and more. We are living in a world that is growing together more and more. So where do our friends live? And compare that to the question, where did your grandparents' friends live? It was close by. Now we have friends all over the world, and from time to time we want to see them. That's a big challenge we have to also overcome. But maybe it's time to hand over the word to someone else.
Yes, thanks. But maybe someone wants to add something. Is there anything you have in mind to bring that alive? Maybe Dasha, is there any recommendations from your side?
I think I'd be very arrogant to try and recommend something in a room with bright people like my co-panelists and politicians of the region, so I wouldn't know better. But I think my point would be that we have a unique opportunity now to recruit differently. So while before you would look for some sort of proximity, you would look for transportation, time spent in commute, etc., as a downside. Now, if COVID has taught us anything, is that we can easily go to a work week where we're only at the office twice a week. So potentially, this is a good time to start sourcing and recruiting brilliant colleagues from just across the belt, rather than someone just around the corner, because now you may not have to commute 5 times a week, but only 2. So I think perhaps a little bit of an opportunity of growth there and exchanging talent across the belt in a way that we haven't before, because COVID allows us to do that.
Cool, thanks. Jan-Philipp Albrecht is nodding quite a lot.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the point where development is very interesting right now, to really address the question of how do we want to live and work in the future, and where do we want to live and work in the future. And I think that the region has to offer a lot in this regard, especially by connecting the issues of sustainability and digital development, and having now an opportunity where you don't have to restructure a lot of old infrastructure, like in old industrial zones. You here have an area which you can develop in the way of building the future, and where like this issue of working from a certain place where you might be living with your family, where you might be feeling home, but working for companies all over the globe maybe, or at least in the different areas of the bigger region here and around the Baltic Sea. I think that's an issue which people now are really more and more thinking about, and developing the right infrastructure for that, which then is also sustainable and carbon neutral, is a huge task. And if we do it as a pilot project here in this region, for example, many other regions will look at it and will try to learn from it. So it's a chance to not only help ourselves, but also many others.
So that sounds like some kind of Erasmus program for the Fehmarn Belt region on a higher level, not only for students, but for people who work here or there or wherever. Karin, would be that an option for you as a founder and CEO of your own company?
For sure, this new connection that we will have between Denmark and Germany will be very well placed in our growth strategy, to say it the least. So we are sitting on top of a technology that can change local food systems. So just to give you an idea, in Germany right now, there's 2 million tons of BSG wasted every year. From that, we could actually feed 25 million kids with proteins and essential amino acids. So with this new connections and how can I say, countries coming closer together and us having a different access to the brilliant people that are in Germany, that would really be our first step of going forward then, because it's much closer soon Germany will be much closer to us, and we will have the same connections that we can have with what we have with Sweden right now. So for a founder of a company with a technology that can be franchised globally, it's definitely a huge opportunity for us.
And for your commune, what's with Lolland? Would that help you?
Yes, yes. I think exactly. But I think that the issue has to be brought up on a higher political level than the mayor on Lolland. I think that the ministers in Schleswig-Holstein and the ministers in Denmark have to put themselves into the same room to find the solution for the future and put on as it start with the politicians. And I would certainly like to be in on that and add in on that work, but I need to have the ministers from the government in Copenhagen and from the government in Kiel to work together to put in a frame to how we have to build that new region. And they have to put in the time, and they have to put in the investments and the money for doing that. And if I'm sure there are a lot of brave people in the region that wants to make that work, but we have to have a frame, and I think that Mr. Albrecht, he can be one of them who can make that frame.
Is there anything happening like that already?
There's a lot happening, of course, but mostly this is happening in the context of European debates and contact. And I think what's happening more now is really the regional aspect. And I think that this is the right moment to strengthen this, because we see that if we want to make the European idea reality and to really work together on the big issues ahead, then we need to have strong regions which are cross-border, because you can develop huge synergies and you can learn from the other side about different aspects. And I very much hope that we are able to address it more in the future between Denmark and Schleswig-Holstein. Of course, it's always thing also of federal competencies, but I think there's a lot of issues we can deal with right now, and this is happening right here on these days also.
Andreas, would you say that's enough, that politicians sit together and talk about a framework?
Well, it's great if they talk about a framework. But looking back, they also talked about a framework that promised a fixed link now, which isn't there. So I guess what most people are looking for is words from politicians that you can trust. I know that they will not be able to influence everything that's happening, including a pandemic situation. I'm aware of that, but especially for us in the educational sector, a bit more of a perspective would be great. So we are trying to offer several things with local schools, universities, and so on. And even now, in the pandemic situations where schools should be aware that they have to invest in a digital infrastructure, they often don't know whether they will have a budget to work with us in half a year from now. So what should we rely the growth of our company on if we don't know what's happening in the future? So I would like to hire people, but I have to know that I will need them next year. I don't want to become a company that hires and fires.
Karin Beukel, is that a problem you have as well?
So I think for us it's a bit of a different situation. So the residual that we are working with is local. That also means that we will be setting up local production sites globally, and here hopefully also in Schleswig-Holstein. So it means that for every brewery you see, at least the larger ones that has plus 30,000 tons of BSG per year, we would need to set up a local production because it is a biological material that cannot travel long distances. So for us, it's a very different situation. And for us, it's more about having the plans on when is it that industry will open up to new innovative ideas. Of course, the pandemic and the political situation of dealing with the pandemic has hampered us as a new startup company with a new technology. But I also truly understand that it's a situation that's very hard to solve and to know what to do because it is a pandemic. But yeah, for us, it would be better to know what are the investments in circular food systems. How will the politicians be part of also defining the residuals that are left? Now we defined one, but there are plenty other streams that we can start working with. And how will it ensure that both researchers, food manufacturers, and investors and consumers will work towards a more sustainable future based on circular food? So that's really a more holistic approach to solving it.
Thanks. Dasha, let's look into the future again, because we talked about that. The politicians sit together, work on a framework. Who else needs to be part of that? You already talked about it, not just politicians and scientists. How do we come closer to this common goal, or how do we evolve it? How does it happen in a way?
Well, I think one way would be to change the paradigm. So what I think we can look back, when you want to look into the future, history is a good starting point, at least in terms of human behavior. And what really worked in the last century is that everybody acknowledged that something had to be done, and it was about a particular thing. And then, we had the axis of evil and the world split in half, but at least the two halves managed to agree on things. So I think one thing is to, and I hate to repeat myself, but I think it's to leave the differences aside for now, and especially with the Fehmarn Link, there's so many things we have in common across Germany and Denmark. And then, of course, with our neighbors in Sweden, etc. So I think start looking at the things we have in common. Then look at the goals we have in common. Then look at how we can do different things better than one another, and make sure that it's not necessarily a competition. And competition is healthy, I know, but make sure that we leverage the synergies. So say, okay, you're good at this. When you put together a football team, you're looking for different capabilities and you want them to play together. I think this is a little bit like that. So it's about introducing long-term thinking into short-term decisions. I think that's missing, and it's often the case because we have the terms that we have in terms of politics, etc. But this is a long-term thing. This is a marathon. So we need to go mile by mile. So commonalities, celebrate the differences in terms of we have competitive advantages, which is great. And then, frankly, I think we need to build infrastructure, and not in a physical sense, because the link itself is a physical infrastructure, but with the things like Karen is doing and her peers, that you have innovation out there, which is less visible maybe, but it needs a regulatory infrastructure to flourish. We didn't build airports before we had planes, but suddenly when we had airplanes, we realized we need airports. And this is where we need the political support and say, we have these airplanes, we have food innovation, we have agro-innovation, energy innovation. It needs infrastructure in terms of regulatory frameworks that are conducive rather than just heavy and delaying. And I know it's a difficult task. I'm not trying to marginalize it, but I think often we need to keep our eyes on the ball and say, what is it we're trying to achieve, rather than look for in every way that it can go wrong.
Cool. Karina, another question. And could you give me a time frame, because I don't see it right now?
We still have 7 minutes for this panel, if I see correctly. Or even 5 only? No, 7. And here comes more or less a suggestion to all of you. I don't know who wants to take this. How about a House of the Small Scientists program for the children in the kindergartens in Germany and Denmark, in order to build up a feeling of trust and openness and respect in a common region at an early stage. So this is more about, sustainability, building sustainability already for the next generations, and language and all of this. So maybe another interesting aspect for you to tackle.
go for it. You can add something or.
Yeah, I'm happy to take it. I think that this is one of the aspects which we have to focus on, the education about also sustainability, about future ideas, about how we can tackle the challenges. And this is also happening already on in many parts of our region, and I think it's a great idea to connect that stronger. It's also one of the ideas which is, of course, tackled on the European level, and where we can be one of the regions developing this framework and looking towards the possibilities which might evolve from that. And I would like to therefore also say that what Dasha says about the development of new ideas, about learning from each other, that is one of the big issues we need to develop everywhere in Europe. And that's why this will be also in the focus of following up to the Green Deal, to all the other investment programs, that of course those cross-border developments where we can have new ideas being brought forward, new technologies being applied in the String region. We talk about the whole question of how to decarbonize transport throughout Scandinavia. This is one of the, with hydrogen, for example, this is one of the developments where we can see that we can build up examples of the future where other regions can learn from, also in Europe. And I think that's a real opportunity for this region. And we can also have a lot of framework from the European Union and a lot of money being invested throughout the upcoming years. So I think that there's also a lot of chances to be taken from the region. So we can take it to the region.
Yes. So let's have one last round, and I'd like you to go to 2029 and let us know what you wish, what other regions can learn from your region. Would you like to start? Maybe 1 second to think about it.
Oh, I'm very I'm thinking much about this green corridor. How to be the first mover in the world to show the world that we are building this together. I think all the problems, issues about food will come after that, but we have to learn from each other. I think there's been said many wise words today. I almost can't add anything on that, but I think that some of the comments here have shown that we are interested in each other, and we have a new possibility with this region, and let's do it from the bottom and let us get to work. I'm looking forward as a mayor in the next years to be in that work. I think we have so many possibilities.
Dasha, what would you like to see?
I would like to imagine we're in 2040 and then go back to 2029 and say, what happened for us to progress towards the long-term goal? So how is this a vital piece that is going to accelerate everything we're trying to achieve in 20 years? How do we make this a key stepping stone rather than just an efficiency link of better transport?
Thanks. Jan Philipp again.
I can just agree to what have been said. I think it's very good, and I think also that this debate today may be one of the starting points for a very good development in the region when we come together more often and work consequently on what we have discussed today.
Thanks. Karin Beukel, looking at 29 or 2040, maybe. What would you like to look back at?
So main point for me is really that I would love to see that we have come together to make changes that not only helps the region, but that goes beyond the region, but that we use the technology, the knowledge, the people, the capabilities that are present in the region, to finalize the different technologies, et cetera, that we are capable of doing here, and then that we transfer them globally to help solve a global food system that is definitely broken right now. So that's my hope.
Andreas, your final words. What's your wish?
Yeah, so I would like to look back to the years which we are now in and be proud that we started early enough to create one region instead of just discussing the limitations that we might have before the fixed link is there. So if we start now to create both a common region and also our future, I see good chances that we really are stronger together.
Perfect last words. Thanks for that. And thanks for the whole panel. It was a pleasure talking to you. I hope this is really a start for more discussions to come, and that at least some or most of your wishes might be true in 2029. So thanks for the 5 of you, and have a great day and enjoy the rest of the conference.